What's good, everybody? Welcome to the channel. My name is Alckemy and we do a lot of crazy sound design stuff. Today we're going to be making whatever pad you just heard at the beginning of the video, even though I haven't done it yet. Before we get started, if you guys like my content, you like my sounds and stuff, then please consider subscribing and maybe interacting with the channel to help me with the algorithm, or support the channel if you want to help me continue making videos like this. Now that that's all out of the way, we're going to go ahead and develop a pad from scratch. Now the title of this is going to be called Neuropads, but I want to be very clear that it's not for the sake of neuro genres. It's more so in the sense that we're going to be taking neuro-based design mindset towards what it is that we're doing regarding crazy filtering and stuff, and making the most organic, lively pad that we can. The premise behind this is the same as a neuro-based, just as much more of like you're changing the context of what you're trying to use the sound for, I guess. So instead of making something that's just completely low and like really aggressive and all that, we're going to be taking something to make it slow evolving, but has lots of movement over time in order to create something more complex, if that makes sense. Let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to be narrating this as I go. I will be making mistakes along the way, but I want you guys to just kind of see my process about how I design these kinds of things in phaseplant. If you don't have phaseplant yet, it's $10 a month. If you don't have it, like it's a steal. phaseplant is amazing. I can't say enough good things about it. I have affiliate links down below in the description if you're interested in this synth. And yeah, enough of that. One of the best ways to start with a pad is a triangle wave. It's got kind of like a very soft tonality, but also kind of warm. And so something that we can kind of just do jumping off the bat is introduce some attack and lots of release. Nice. Let's make it a little bit more interesting by adding some detuning here. Kind of like so, doesn't need to be crazy, and some spread. Now what I'm going to do is duplicate this, and I'm going to change the voices to 2. And I'm going to grab a modulator here, set it to smooth, and set this to a slow time, and grab this and turn the level up. And what I'm going to do with this is actually pull this an octave up, kind of like so. And now this is going to kind of come in every once in a while to create kind of like a nice layer. But right off the bat, whenever we do this, we've got kind of like a main fundamental generator, and then these other kind of supporting oscillators on top are going to help give it some character that's going to help it breathe. As you can tell. Let's do that one more time, except we're going to use a different modulator this time, and we're going to set this to 19 semitones instead. Hit Option. That's going to create another randomizer with the same settings, and then we can kind of do that. So these two are moving independent of each other. I'm just pushing F, mind you. Awesome. Now that we've got something like that, we're going to go ahead and grab a filter. We're going to throw that on the bottom. We're going to have just a little bit of distortion on this. You want to be careful with this, but just a touch, maybe like that much. Let's hit that Option command again and go into moving the cutoff. Now I'm going to set this kind of like here, so that way it's going to open up all the way but not close all the way. And we're already well on our way of designing an interesting pad. Cool. Now that we have something like that, we're going to introduce a couple more layers. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make another pad, or another generator of the sort, but we're going to use something like a saw wave this time. And for this particular one, I like to actually use a bandpass filter. And so what we'll do is kind of the same thing. We'll turn both of these down, and then we'll kind of mix up whatever one we use, so that way it's going to kind of start to have this kind of symbiotic interpolation between each other, so something is always moving together, even though it's kind of chaotic, if that makes sense. Within this one, I'm going to turn this one up to an octave, and then these two are kind of moving differently of each other, I think. Yeah. And now we're going to set this one to a bandpass and kind of turn the resonance up and turn the slope up. So that way this is kind of only going to come in at certain particular times as it moves. Speaking of, we want to make sure that this does move, but I'm going to kind of focus on the low-mid region here. Turning the unison on both of these. Nice. Let's go ahead and grab one more group, and this one is going to be our noise. I'm going to turn this down to like 5%, and then I'm going to grab a filter on this, And for this one in particular, we're going to use an LFO set at a low ramp or downslope ramp. On this one, I'm going to turn the cutoff all the way up and pull this down. We need an output. And what I'm going to do is make another randomizer, and this is going to move this here at an arbitrary rate. If we were to play a chord like this, I'm going to play D sharp, G, and C. Then we're going to get something interesting in that way. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to make sure that this is going to lane 2, and I'll process it in that way, and this is going to go directly to lane 3. So these are now working in parallel. Let's go ahead and focus on this one for now. And what I'm going to do is start off with maybe just something nice and easy like a chorus. Then we're going to build off of that, and we're going to start introducing some different delays. Now I like to set these at different times and kind of let these randomizers take over on the mix, but I'm going to pull it all the way down and maybe not go to 100%. And the reason why I like doing this is because you get these different interactions with each other sometimes with having these set to particular values. So you'll see here in just a second, but I want to make sure that I'm using different randomizers for the different mixes on these. This one is going to be set to ping pong, and let's listen to that. So you get some cool stereo stuff every once in a while. Let's go ahead and grab a notch filter, kind of move through this. And this is not planned, by the way. I'm just saying like, all right, let's try this or let's try this. So if you're wondering like why I'm making these decisions, I'm just like kind of following through at random. So sorry, I didn't mention this, but I'm just setting 2 different randomizers with the cutoff on each one of these and then messing with this here, as you can see. Let's go into a multipass now. And we'll play with a couple different things. The first thing that I'm going to mess with is a pitch shifter. And this one is going to be set at 12. And then we're going to do another one that's set at -12. Now that kind of seems silly, right? But the cool thing is that when you start getting into changing the mix between all of these, then you're going to get some cool different interactions between them sometimes. And I'm kind of keeping it simple by keeping these at octaves, but you can make chords out of these if you want. It's just you might have to be careful as it might start to sound wonky if you do too many. I think I wanted to do this one. So this is set at 8/16, and then that way these two are moving at the same rate, but at different, I guess, 2 different randomizers, so they're moving independently of each other. Nice. Let's go ahead and set one more delay on this. We'll do something nice and long, and then we'll pull the mix up all the way and just kind of let it do its thing. Over here, I'm going to make sure that the low end is mono. So we'll go to like this and just turn that down. And then I'm going to add in a high pass filter to kind of make this move across the low ends. That's going to kind of help us anyways, because it'll help us keep from like things being like super muddy or too many things playing at once. But you can kind of see that this is the same idea as how I would normally process a Neurobass. Conversely, over here, I'm going to grab a bandpass filter, and I'm going to focus on the low-mid regions here. So we'll go over this way, and then we'll make this move on its own, kind of like so. And maybe kind of pull that down a bit. So you'll see that kind of sweeping these frequencies to create something interesting. This is where I usually have the most play, to be honest. So what I might do is add another pitch shifter here, maybe kind of like a 7th or so. I'm going to pull this up just a little bit and just introduce that ever so slightly. So I don't want it to be a full thing, because when we start playing chords, it's going to sound really weird. But I'm also going to introduce a phaser, if I can find it. Now, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to turn this down to a slower rate, and then I'm going to mess with the cutoff. And because we're focusing on the low mids right here, I'm only going to set the cutoff range to whatever or try to something similar to match whatever this frequency range is. So 138 to 3K. And maybe even that's a bit overkill. So just something nice and easy around there. And this is what that sounds like. Now to make this even more complex, we're going to take this over here and we're going to pull back on the mix. And that way it's going to kind of fade in between having a stronger signal, not being processed by all these and kind of moving on its own in between. On the high end, I'm just going to probably throw an ensemble on this and then turn the mix down. And then maybe mess with the mix on this as well. So I'll pull that up and then turn it down. Kind of like so. And as you can kind of tell, like I'm trying to be usually subtle with how much effect I apply, because if you do too many, then it's just going to sound like, well, nothing interesting, I guess. So over here, we're going to add some compression, and this is kind of like your threshold range. This is your downwards compression, and then this is expansion and upwards compression. But we're just going to kind of focus on downwards for now. I think one last thing that we might do is we might automate a reverb through this. And we are going to have a reverb at the end, but sometimes you can get some interesting results just by kind of having them stack in such a way, as long as you're subtle with it. There we go. Let's add a limiter at the end just in case this gets crazy. And then what I'm going to do over here is actually grab another filter, and it's going to be a low pass. Let's grab this one because that's not really doing a whole lot right now. And then we'll set a delay on this one to here. And kind of use this to pull up as well. Set that to ping pong. I'm still just pushing F. Cool. So on this one, we might focus on kind of spreading this one out a little bit, but this is our kind of middle layer right here in that retrospect. Now for now, I might start by pulling the slope off because I want this to just have a little bit more character. But for this one, we're going to kind of mess with some other effects to see if we can get something else that's interesting. So we're going to introduce this just a little bit, turn this to minus and turn the stereo on, and then we're going to pull back on the mix. Actually, we're going to do the opposite where we pull the mix up. Then what I would like to do is introduce probably a multi-pass on this. And this is just going to be a bunch of different stuff that will be kind of interesting. Actually, I take that back. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to pull up snap heap, and we're going to start to stack some delays on this to create something interesting. So we'll go here, and I think I'm just going to set these up, and then I'll start applying all the modulators or whatever. But we kind of have the freedom to do whatever we want with this because we've got this global mix tab, right? So it'll be kind of interesting to see what comes out of this. Let's go over here though and set this up. I'll set that to 8. And then I'm going to pull this one up. And I guess I'll pull this one down all the way. Turn the correlation off. I think that it just sounds better. I don't really know what that does, to be honest, but I don't know. It sounds better to me. And then on LFO2, we're going to do the same thing. Sync 8 out of 16. Set that here and pull this down. If you're still with me, by the way, kudos to having a major attention span. So this is kind of what this is going to sound like for now. Pretty cool so far. Let's keep going. We're going to do some different delay stuff now, and kind of same mindset behind all this, where we're going to pull the mix back and set that here. Maybe we'll turn the ducking on just a little bit, but now we'll kind of cross this over and do a longer delay. Except this one I'll flip the polarity, so these, as this one comes up, this one will come down. And then we'll do one more and set that at, I don't know, I like the triplet delay. That just sounds really good to me for the most part, so that's kind of why I tend to stick with that one. Let's also grab a frequency shifter on this and just kind of turn this to like something very subtle, kind of like that. And then to top everything off, we're going to change the mix between all of these and set these to parallel. Okay, everything that's going to go in here is going to go into, again, just a compressor as well, because this is going to be a bunch of different sounds and all that, and I don't want anything kind of crazy loud peeking through. Let's listen to how that sounds now. Sounds pretty nice so far. So one last thing that I'm going to do on this is I'm going to introduce a ring mod, and this is one of my favorite effects for these kinds of sounds, because what we can do is pull the mix down, turn the frequency down as well, and then on this one we're going to mess with the spread a bit, and this is going to just introduce a little bit of flutter whenever it comes in. So take a listen. Sounds nice. Finally, let's go ahead and add another filter on this as well, and then this will kind of just mess with the cutoff in that way. So I'm going to do one more that's kind of independent of itself. And then I think that one of the major things that we need to add into all of this is a reverb. We're going to leave this one consistent on that. But what I would like is for these two to try to interact with each other in such a way. So sounds pretty good to me. And something that you can even mess with is, like, right now we've got saw waves if you want a warmer sound, but you can switch this over to a sine or a square and see if that will give you kind of a nicer Let's turn the spread up on this and this one as well. Maybe the detuning. Man, that sounds really nice to me. One more thing that I think I want to do with this is I'm going to introduce a 7th right here and then change this up, just because I think it would sound nice to kind of complement the chord that we've created in that way. And let me see. I might reduce the spread on some of these so that way we don't get too much phase cancellation, because obviously it's, you know, kind of wrecked right now. But one cool thing to kind of keep in mind is that because this is a pad, it's okay, you know, and this might not be used for something that you would have the idea of listening to in headphones. It could be like Dolby Digital or whatever. And so in real life, like whenever you get sub frequencies and all that, it can be panned, you know. You might hear a large boom from just the right side of your ear, and you can kind of get away with those things, but being mindful about how you apply this in context is kind of where that idea comes into play. For me, I just like creating organic pads that kind of have a lot of movement because I find that they're pleasant to listen to. If you actually want to use this and stuff, then I would just probably record an actual chord and take like the best cuts of that. Maybe like, you know, the filter will open up or whatever, and then you can use that specific part. Kind of the same thing applies for Neurobass, right? But, you know, it's all hypothetical, so do with it what you will. I'm just trying to make a cool sound. So I actually think that this is doing pretty well. One other thing that I'm going to do with this particular generator is I'm actually just going to mess with the pan a little bit so that way it floats around to create a little bit more wideness. And now let's go ahead and finish this up. I'm going to grab a multipass here, and we're just going to grab an OTT, which is called Ocarina of the Top. This is actually the overachiever preset. You just turn off the super low and the super high band and then set the mix to 50%. We'll just drag that over here. And then one last thing is one more multipass. And this is just going to make sure that our low end is in mono in case if you actually want to use this for the context of music, because I don't imagine all of you are doing like cinematic sound design, right? Let's set this to like 200. I lied, 150. And the final thing that we'll do to this is add dynamics at the end. I do this pretty much on every patch. It's just kind of what I do. You don't have to. I do it just to control the sound a bit. But if you did everything with me and you followed along, this is what the sound should be like. Forgot to turn the attack and release up. Nice. I lied. There's one more thing that I want to do. I'm actually going to start this from 0, and then I'm going to take one of these and turn the gain up this way. So that way that sound isn't coming up all the time. Sounds good. So thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope that you learned something in the processing of making kind of complex organic pads. I make a lot of these on stream if you ever tune in, and if you ever need to see something different in the same realm, I advise you to kind of come in and say what's up. If this video gets 100 likes, I will give this patch out on Discord and free stuff. Other than that, I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope that you had a lot of fun watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys.